Hello and welcome along to Across the Channel for your weekly staple of French football chat. France have qualified for the World Cup after beating Ukraine and Azerbaijan. Ligue 1 returns this Friday with a sizzling southern derby between Nice and Marseille. And to get us into the mood for that, I am delighted to say that I'm joined this morning by a Marseille legend. An Irishman who stood up to Bernard Tapie, who traded Guinness for pastis, crisps for olives, pies for enchoyade, and, of course, who left some fantastic memories down at the Velodrome. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tony Cascarino interview. Thanks a lot for joining us once again. My name is Matt Spiro. I'm really pleased to have a great interview to bring you this week. When I first launched this podcast in August, my thinking was very much to mix up the Ligue 1 chat that we bring you each week with some in-depth interviews like this one, and also bring you some deep dives and analysis on the big issues in the French game. With the help of our excellent sound engineer Stephen Willis, and our social media guru, Eric Ford, we very much hope to keep on delivering these fun and engaging, informative podcasts. So we'd like to ask you that if you do appreciate this kind of content, we'd be really grateful if you could rate, review and comment on the podcast platforms. And also subscribe to us across the channel on YouTube. You should be able to find our page there. Now, most of you will already know Tony Cascarino. He was a Republic of Ireland international. He played for many clubs, including Gillingham, Millwall, Aston Villa, Celtic, Chelsea, and crucially for this podcast, Marseille, Nancy, and very briefly, Red Star as well, right at the end of his career. So welcome to the podcast. How are you doing, Tony Cascarino?
I'm really good, Matt. Really good. Looking forward to spending a bit of time and reminiscing. So, yeah, absolutely good.
Just one topical subject to start with. Are you still celebrating after the Republic of Ireland's unbelievable turnaround, their comeback in World Cup qualifying?
Yeah, well, it was just an amazing week, Matt, really. It wasn't just the game at Hungary, which we won 3-2 away from home. It was more the beating Portugal, 2-0, Ronaldo getting sent off. The VAR that everybody hates, and it was the best VAR 3 minutes of all time for me. When, you know, Ronaldo's doing the tears and rubbing his eyes, and the fans are reacting to it. And then Portugal, obviously, he got sent off in that game, and then Portugal play without him, and they win 9-1, and it was just a mad week. If you had said most times, Matt. You play football and it gets to the international break and everybody wants the Premier League or Ligue 1 in France and they want the league back. I was thinking, God, I'd love another international weekend. But yeah. It was amazing. It was amazing. My WhatsApp group with the Italia only 90 players all on it, and we're all sending messages as the game's going on. It was going crazy, and it was just, you know, modern technology with WhatsApp groups, and we're all sitting there in a, you know, I put a message out straight after the game. Anyone fancy a pint? Like to the lads on WhatsApp group, Italia 90. And John Aldridge immediately come back, love one. And then Andy Townsend comes back, right, let's get the coach ready. Let's tell Tom, the driver, to pick us up outside the hotel, because we're all pretending we're still in Ireland as we were players, like, and we're arranging to go out and celebrate. And the messages were just great fun. You know,
it's really good to hear that, and I know so many people, myself included, even if I'm an Englishman, sort of loved what that Irish team did, and I've got vivid memories of Italia 90, and that's brilliant to know that you're still, you know, chatting in the WhatsApp group. It must have brought back memories, and a lot of people, myself included, would love to see Ireland in the States next summer.
Yeah. Look, we went 1988 Euros, we went 1990 World Cup and 94 World Cup. In 6 years, we'd been to 3 tournaments, and, you know, the atmosphere with the fans was just extraordinary. And it was, it was recollection of everything that happened. Ireland felt crazy again. The Celtic Tiger, or, the Gaelic Tiger. It was just at its very best last week. And look, Ireland getting, what hasn't been mentioned too much is Ireland have scored 5 goals in 2 weeks in 2 of the biggest games of their group. And who would have thought that they'd beat Portugal at home 2-0 and then go to Hungary and win 3-2 when necessary to get into a playoff spot? It was an extraordinary 5 days.
Yeah, well, we're going to come across the channel because that is the name of the podcast. Tony, I want to take you back 31 years. I hope that doesn't make you feel too old, but I'm certainly old enough to remember those days. But I want to ask you, what was going on in your career at the time? So you've played for Ireland in the United States. You've come to an end of a spell at Chelsea where you had a few injuries as well. What's going on in your head, and what happens next?
Well, first of all, I take it back a little bit, further than that. I played my last game in England, Matt, was the FA Cup final of 1994, where Chelsea played Manchester United. And I'd scored a couple of goals in the 2 previous games before the final. Not the game before, because Mark Stein was injured and I'd played in place of him. And I thought I was back to my sharpest and felt best, and I got left out the FA Cup final. And we lost 4-0 and I was on the subs bench, which I travelled in with Gavin Peacock and Paul Elliott, two players that I played with at Chelsea. And I knew them anyway. Gavin Peacock's dad was my first manager, Keith Peacock. And Paul I knew as a kid because he was in the Saturday, Sunday teams of, the kids level when we were 12, 13. They both thought I'd play. So I went into Arlington, the training ground, the week of the cup final, and Glenn called me in the office and said, Glenn Hoddle, said to me, I'm not going to play you against Manchester United. He said, because when we beat them home and away in the league that year, by the way. We beat them 1-0 twice, at Stamford Bridge and at Old Trafford. He said, we played 2 small lads, and so I'm going to leave you out the final. I'm going to play Johnny Spencer and Gavin Peacock. And I turned around and said, well, I played in the one at Stamford Bridge, Glenn. And he went, did you? I said, yeah, I played. I played in the game at Stamford Bridge. I started and I played. And he went, oh. And it's all got a bit awkward because I sort of went back to that. Anyway, I got left out the cup final, but it was my last game for Chelsea. So my contract was coming to an end. So I was in a real limbo moment. And the day after the cup final, we did, even though we lost 4-0 years gone by, you have to laugh because we still did an open top bus down Fulham Broadway. And there was lots of fans there, even though we lost 4-0. And when we was up on the balcony, because we did it in the mayor's office, so anyway, Glenn told me then that he was letting me go at Chelsea. So that was quite hard because I was in limbo, but I had the opportunity to go World Cup. But I got injured in the first week when there was a thunderstorm. We had to come inside from training because of the dangers of lightning and being struck. And I pulled my calf in the gym on the Stepmaster. And that meant I was out for 3 weeks. And that was a real, because that basically wrote off all the group games for me. Couldn't get fit at all. Went and saw, that makes me laugh, an Ireland colleague who I was with, Kevin Moran, who played for Manchester United. He said to me he'd seen a psychic when he was out there because he had had an injury, and said, I think you should see her, because I was 2 weeks, I was pulling my hair out because I still knew I wasn't fit. So I went and saw this psychic, and she just spoke to me and rubbed my head and everything and just talked to me. Do you know, I trained the next morning and I was fine. And it was like, this isn't real. I was told 3 weeks and I couldn't add it all together, do you know what I mean? And I did play against the Dutch, but by that time we'd gone through the group phases. We got beat in the game against the Dutch, but I'd only had minutes. So I basically come back from the World Cup with... And when I was out there, I had a few clubs. I had Blackpool, Notts County and others, and they were all lower down the pecking order. And I had my first message coming from... Dennis Roach, who was a big agent in England, Marseille have made contact. And I didn't know anything about what was going on with Marseille. Obviously they'd been relegated from, the year before being the Champions League winner in '93. I was sitting alongside John Sheridan along the way, and I showed him some faxes of Blackpool had come in for me. And John Sheridan, being the type of player he was, said to me, don't rule it out. Big Dipper at Blackpool, it's a great ride. You want to make sure, taking the real banter of the dressing room, giving me stick. And then I showed him Marseille, and he literally went, Marseille, oh, fuck off. You're going to take you like this to me. And I went, been in contact. And he went, the Champions League or the European Cup winners that particular season? I went, no chance. And I said, I've just had a message come through. It's a fax from Dennis Roach. And Dennis Roach was nicknamed the Cockroach, as you might have heard before, Dennis. And he was involved in many, many deals. He was involved in Chrissy Waddle's deal, I think, to Marseille, and many others, Glenn Hoddle. So this had come about, and I still thought it was pie in the sky. But as I got back from the World Cup, I then got to know the story of they'd been relegated or demoted to Ligue 2 in France, and it became more real. So I did get the call from Dennis to say he had an assistant, and he said, you're going to go to Paris and meet Bernard Tapie tomorrow. Make sure you get to Heathrow. Everything is in place for you to go and talk to Marseille. So that's how it all started.
Had you heard of Bernard Tapie at that time?
No, I knew nothing about him. I'd seen clips of him. I'd seen clips of him talking, and I used to think he was a mixture of sort of Doug Ellis and Ken Bates in England, but seemed even wilder than Ken Bates. But he had that, because there was Deadly Doug, who everybody knew at Villa, who I'd been under, and then Ken Bates, who was a complete maverick, who would just hurl abuse at you if you were not performing. And then I saw Bernard Tapie, and I sort of thought, is he as bad as Ken, or is he as, because Doug was quite deceptive in the way he would talk, and so I was a bit confused about meeting him. But he didn't let me down when I actually did meet him in his chateau in Paris. That was, honestly, Matt, I got there and there was removal vans literally going in and out of this chateau as I walked in. So he was moving, but again, I didn't know the reasons why. But as I was there, he sort of found time to talk to me. It made me like I was on on an interview process, I'm just hanging around. He had me sort of hanging around and didn't have much importance in seeing me. And then eventually he comes and says, come and sit down. He's broken English, but I had a guy with me, and he started talking, and he said, what you like in broken English? What you like, player? And I went, I'm thinking, does he not know what I'm like? Like a big centre forward, quite. And as I was about to reply, he went, Hoddle. And went, big thumbs up. And I went, no, I'm not like Hoddle. And he went, Trevor Stephen. And I went, no, not Trevor Stephen. And put the thumbs up. And then he went, Mark Haitley. And as I was about to reply, he went, in my face. And I started laughing. And I know now. He was doing it as a complete wind-up. He knew exactly what I was about.
Yeah.
He knew exactly the type of style I played.
Yeah, more Haitley than Hoddle, it's
Absolutely.
Fair to say.
Yeah, I was that type of player. Mark was one of my heroes growing up. So, the ability to head the ball like he did. And also, Haitley, didn't he? He went to Monaco with Glenn Hoddle.
Yeah.
So Tapie knew exactly what I was.
So were you thinking, do I jump in? This is all a bit mad. Like, I've only known English club football until now. Here I am meeting this very sort of, eccentric, grandiose Frenchman. Did you think this could be fun?
Well, first of all, it was an incredible opportunity. Marseille was a fanatical club, which I knew about. Did I know how fanatical? No. But it was a club that I just thought, the thought of Blackpool and Notts County or dropping down to League 2 in England or League 1, that wasn't appealing. And the circumstances were that particular time, Marseille had an embargo on buying players, so all they could take is free transfers. So Tapie wanted a striker that would be suited for League 2, that would be physically and more of a direct style that he was going to play in that division. So he saw me as a free transfer, which they could do free transfers, they were allowed to, but they couldn't spend on anybody. So it was a sort of a perfect mix for the club and me getting an opportunity. And I just was never, once Marseille had come in and interest, it was, for me, it was just a massive yes. I leapt
To be fair, Tony, like, you know, a lot of stuff is said about Bernard Tapie, obviously, but he obviously had an eye for a player, and I'm not trying to flatter you by saying this, but you scored 61 goals in 2 seasons, and you know, it was a great fit, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I got in super. You know, one of my biggest things, one of my biggest achievements in my career, Matt, was turning a career around, because there's a lot of people who keep on the slippery slope, just keep going down, and I was on that slippery slope, and I got to Marseille, and I remember as I was on the flight from Gatwick to Marignane Airport, and you go out into the sea as you're coming into Marignane, and then come back onto the runway. And when you fly past the stadium, you can see the stadium in the distance. And I was sitting on the flight, and I looked at the stadium and thought, oh, what a stadium that looks like. You know, like playing in front of, you know, whatever it was, 30, 50,000 fans. And I just thought it was my last chance saloon. It really was. I had to make it work. So I stopped being a lad, as in, you know, that was one of my biggest faults, that I joined in with the lads, and it's not down to them, it's down to me. I put on weight easy. Big centre forwards can easily get out of shape, Matt. You know, I've used this in columns I've done in England, talked about it, where you don't play big centre forwards, whether it's John Hartson, whether it's Duncan Ferguson, you know, all these types of players. If you don't play them, they can look lethargic, awkward, out of sync with the rest of the team. Exactly the same. And my idea was to get myself in the best shape I could. And I went from playing at an average of 14 stone in England to 13 stone 8 in France. And I was a completely different player. I could run all day.
I can imagine, Tony, the lifestyle, obviously a lot of sun, the diet, the sort of outdoors lifestyle compared to London or anywhere else really in the UK. That must have sort of helped you. Tell us a bit about the sort of, you know, the cultural changes and the shock it must have been.
Well, I was quite fortunate because I joined the club and many of the players spoke English anyway, to a decent level. There was quite a few that spoke English. And also the physio, Marseille, Jacques Bailly, he was the physio for Henri Leconte on the tennis. And he spoke literally perfect English. So he was always very helpful towards me. So there was that was a big start for me. But the fact that I was really training well. I improved over a 2 or 3 week period very, very quickly. And I started the second division with, I think, 7 goals in 7 games, like 1 in each. And I was, every game I felt like I was getting better. And then we played Juventus in a European friendly, because it was like preparation. And we played them at the Velodrome and we won 2-0 and I scored both. And Jurgen Kohler was the centre-half for Juventus at the time, the German. And he said to me as we was coming off the pitch, because he'd played against me in a friendly when we played Germany with the Republic of Ireland in Germany, and we'd won 2-0 in Germany and I'd scored and I played against him. And he said to me after the game against Juve, he said, "You're not the same player, like you're not. You're completely different." Because I was probably a stone lighter, and really I could get around the pitch when I was at me pumping physically, and that was to me just a massive big plus. And Andy Townsend come and visited me when I was out there, and he saw me and he said, "Are you ill?" And I said, "No." He said, "You look ill," because I was literally chiselled in my face, and he said, "I've never seen you in as fit as this. I've never seen you this fit. Even in your best performances with Millwall and other clubs." He said, "You look." You look ill, but there's not an ounce on you."
Can I ask, was it alcohol as well? Because I know the culture in England there, like, you know, having a few pints before, you know,
it was
after
everything.
games.
It was everything. It was, you know, it was 3 times a day training, especially in pre-season. And then it was the breakfasts that you were given. Fizzy drinks were banned, and you know, I just didn't have a drink at that particular time. And the food, I was just eating really healthy food, and it made a massive difference to me. And you know, everything. Take this, Matt. Right, when we had that first season, we had a Christmas party arranged, and of course we have the break, the Trev, the break of 3 weeks. And the lads said, "Right, we're going out." So now, bearing in mind, not so long ago, I went out in Scotland with the Scottish boys at Celtic, and we went to a fancy dress at Christmas, and I was Popeye. I went out and we were literally out all night, and I was Popeye, and I'm bumping into Celtic fans who were saying to me, you forgot your spinach because you haven't taken it, you're not doing a lot for us, and all this sort of banter. So I've gone as Popeye. And, it's gone on till like 4 or 5 in the morning when I was at Scotland. Then at clubs in England. And then I go to the Christmas dinner in Marseille, and we've gone out for a meal, and we've gone to a Pizza Hut, and we've had a couple of glasses of wine, and at 10 o'clock I'm there with one other player who's not been in the team, thinking, this is it, just me and him, everyone else has gone home. So our Christmas party in Marseille was by far the worst I'd ever done. And I'm left with Mazziloli. I think Mazziloli. He was a player, he was a fullback, and he was wanting to talk to someone because he couldn't get a game in the first team, and we would have just left chatting, you know.
Yeah. But you were enjoying your football. Tell us what it's like. What was it like in that dressing room? I think I'm right in saying that Didier Deschamps, just when you arrived, Deschamps was on his way, wasn't he, to Juventus?
Yeah, no, I tell you who was leaving when I went in the office was the German international striker, Rudi Völler.
Rudi Völler, yeah.
We crossed. He come out of the office, and I was going in to meet it was the vice president, to meet the vice president to sign a contract, and he was coming out, and because I think he went to Roma. I think he joined Roma at that time, Rudi Völler, and I crossed him, and he just said to me, "You'll love it. You'll love Marseille," you know. And I got that feeling. Loads of players, you know. You mentioned the dressing room. The dressing room was a real mix of younger lads and senior pros. There was a good number of players, by the way, Matt, who were in that dressing room that won the Champions League. Jean-Marc Ferrari, Jean-Philippe Giron, Bernard Cazeneuve. You know, and then Bruno Germain as well. He came along a year after, but there was Fabien Barthez was there. You know, so there was a good few players who'd won the Champions League the year before, still in the club. So it was a great mix. And Michel de Wolf, a Belgium international, came along. He was my roommate, Michel. He was about 36, 37, but come in for 1 year and done brilliantly well for them. And it was a real mixture of players that. The senior pros who was coming to the end, who still felt that had a duty to put on and play their best for Marseille, and young lads who had to prove themselves. And it was a great blend.
That shows how big Marseille are in France, I guess. They're down in the second division, but they've got all these French internationals who are staying. Tell us what it was like, especially, away from home, because you were travelling to some small teams. Going to stadiums, but I can imagine it was a huge occasion for these clubs when Marseille, European champions a year before, came to town.
Yeah, and also Marseille took a lot of fans with them. And Marseille are very well supported, as you know, all over France. You know, just a quick note, I played in, what's the name of it? I was trying to think of how to phrase it. We played in a game that was basically ex-Marseille players up against ex-PSG players. We played in a game in Paris. And there was 20,000 there for retired players. And I played up front with Jean Papin for Marseille. And the whole stadium was in Paris, and I'd say 80% of the fans in Paris were Marseille fans. And this is at the end of my career. And also, the leaders of all the groups, from the Yankees, the 69ers, the winners, all the leaders, I saw things that would never have happened in England. Like when we lost a particular game, we lost a away game. I can't remember exactly who it was to, but it was somewhere in Brittany. And we lost 3-2. And the fans the leaders of the fans, the groups, there's about 3 or 4 of them, got on the bus. Tappy had let them get on the bus before the bus left to go to the airport to fly back. And they basically told us in no uncertain terms what's expected of us, these leaders of the groups. And I'm thinking, is no one going to tell them to get off the bus? Like, what are they doing? You know, this would never happen in England. And all the players are like, shh, no, don't, just sit and listen. And that happened twice at Marseille, where the fans turned up and spoke to the players and let them know that if the performance in the next game isn't right, there's going to be people who are going to suffer, or, you know, the criticism's going to come, and the intimidation was probably the better word. But that was, to me, was wow. I've just witnessed 3 or 4 fans. Imagine Arsenal play tomorrow and the bus is waiting outside the stadium and Mikel Arteta lets 3 fans get on who are the leaders of the Arsenal groups. and then tell the players what is expected of them. That would make headlines in England. This is ridiculous. This is a joke, a disgusting. In Marseille, it was, no, they have the right to tell us how they feel and what's expected of us. And you have to buy into it. Because they turned up at the training ground and did it as well.
It still happens that, whether that's, Lyon, we've seen recently, Rennes as well, they're in a bad spell. They've lost to a little team at home. The players have to go. And, not on the team bus, but they go like in front of the ultras, and there'll be, one or two of the leaders telling them what they think. And yeah, you're right. Like they just have to stand there and kind of take it. Yeah.
No, which I found that extraordinary. I did, Matt. And do I think it was a bad thing? No, I don't. Now looking back, I thought you weren't pulling your weight. You weren't getting away with it. And we could say that that's the coach's job, or the members of staff and other players, to tell other players that you're not pulling your weight. That happens just naturally anyway. But coming from the fans is completely different.
But Tony, when things are going well, when Marseille are winning, what's it like being inside that velodrome, scoring a goal in front of those fans?
Well, of course it's unbelievable. I experienced so many good times with Marseille fans. They, Tony Goal was something that name that stuck with me, and, witnessing the Irish flag and just my face being in the whole end covered when I was sort of coming to my end of my time at Marseille. The appreciation they gave to me. What else but tingles down your spine. And whenever I talk about Marseille, it's a very special period of my life for many different reasons. And, wearing the number 9 shirt of Marseille, where Francescoli, Rudi Völler, Ravanelli and many others, Jean-Pierre Papin, have worn, is an incredible honour for me. That's where it starts and ends. It's an honour. Always will be in my heart, always, because of, I spoke about Marseille over the last couple of decades, and people ask me to speak, and I'm just like, you need Marseille to win. It's good for French football for Marseille to be competitive, and when they're not, and you've got this enormous club with massive potential, and they're just an also run, and it's got Droit à bout on the badge, it's like. And I've been critical of some of the styles I've seen from managers that have managed Marseille, where it's based on possession-based football, but no purpose. And that's not Marseille. Marseille have to play with purpose, to win games and to go after. You cannot play at the Velodrome and play a possession-based, counter-attacking type of play when the whole idea of the football club is in their face. Make it an impossible place to go to. Be fear. Players would have talked in years gone by how hard it was to play at Marseille.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're going to talk a little bit about De Zerbi and the current team, because there is a lot of discussion as well about that. It's been good at times, but more recently, like the Atalanta game, that they lost in the Champions League, it was very much like Marseille were cautious, possession football. Like you said, counter-attack. And I know a lot of Marseille fans are not happy about that. They want to see exactly what you just described. But before we go on to that, I want to talk about one or two stories, because I know you witnessed some incredible things out in Marseille. You played in the European Cup, Tony. I'll ask you about this first, because Marseille have got a very special relationship. They still do with European competition. And I believe it was Olympiacos, your opponent in was it the UEFA Cup at the time?
Yes, yeah. We played Olympiacos away in the first game, and the standout feature of that night for me was that there was an English journalist at the game in Greece. He started talking to me, and Bernard Tapie saw him talking to me, and I didn't think anything for it. He was just asking me questions: how are you getting on in Marseille? You enjoying it? You're doing well? Blah blah blah. I was like, yeah, and. So we played a game, and we're not playing well first half, and we're struggling. And I'd missed a couple of chances. So I go back in the dressing room, and as we do for half time, get in there, and Bernard Tapie's made literally gone after me. Like, how much? He's gone, how much? And I'm like, what? What do you mean, how much? And he's gone, he pay you. How much? That man talk to you. How much he give you? And I've gone, nothing. He's a journalist. Like this. And he started swearing in French and then whips off his jacket. And I've told him where to go. I've gone, oh, F off. Right? And he's literally, right, me and you, and the dressing room, and all the lads, Cascarino and all others, have all got round me because I've stood up to sort of, stand up for myself, basically. And he's taken off his jacket, and everyone's like, no, don't, and it's gone like mad. This is all during half time. And it eventually calmed down, but it calmed down because all the players were keeping me away and not, and Tappy was sort of still cursing me in French and everything. And bearing in mind, I'd done brilliantly well up till then. And it all changed in a moment with Tappy in that dressing room. And we eventually went out back in the second half. We ended up winning the game. So we've won away from home. Nothing's been said. Anyway, when we got back to Marseille, we got back in the early hours. But we were still training in the afternoon the next day to a warm down. We go there and we're on the pitch, and all of a sudden this car comes, black car with some obviously security, come out, and the car parks on the pitch, right, as we're doing the training session. And Tappy gets out and he walks towards me, and he looks at me and he goes, big balls, you, big balls. I started laughing, and he was so intimidating, letting me know you ain't getting away with what I think you've done. And I just said I didn't do anything. I didn't take, and I hadn't long been there, so I wasn't replying in French. But it was Tappy. But it's also his way, because we played the return leg and we beat Olympiacos. I think it was 3-1 on the night. I got 2 and played really, really well. Scored 2 good goals in that competition, and that was really a really big night. I played so well that night, and then he, arm round you, cuddling you after the game, and all your best mate and all this. But he could switch, and there was no filter at all on Tappy. I've seen him go after players in dressing rooms like no other. Embarrass them, just curse and bullying, everything that you could say. He would do it just to win. But the guy was a winner. And that's one thing I always say. Whether, it isn't a coincidence that Bernard Tapie won the Tour de France as an owner of a team. It wasn't a coincidence that Marseille won the Champions League. Because whatever you think about Tapie, he was a winner in the way he fought. He always didn't get there. He didn't always get there. But you could tell this guy, there is no second to him is failure. And an amazing guy. I mean, he said a few things about me after my career, because I spoke a bit about some of the things regarding injections in dressing rooms and things like that I was very uncertain. I never knew exactly what they were, but I always this is a bit strange, So, but I didn't want to take that away, because Marseille, under the Tapie era, had some amazing teams. If you just look at the players that played for Marseille, Francescoli, Moser, Waddle, Stephen, Papin, and many others, they had some amazing sides.
And Bernard Tapie as well. I think what people don't realise, certainly in the UK, they'll talk about Tapie, they go, oh yeah, the match-fixing guy, Marseille, that was a dark period. They probably don't quite realise what his status is still today in Marseille, where he is just absolutely worshipped. He is still seen as, Mr. Marseille. He's got kind of like Maradona in Napoli status. Do you know what I mean?
Do you know what, Matt?
Yeah.
He said one thing to me that's always stuck with me about all the accusations about what was Marseille. And now think of this, if you translate it to if this happened in England. He once said about Arsene Wenger's Monaco when they won the league, and he'd been questioned and all different things happened, and he once said privately, he said, isn't it incredible, like Monaco can pay foreign players tax-free? No other club in France can do that. Is that not financial doping? Right? And now, if we want to put that into the Premier League, if we say Manchester United can pay foreign players tax-free but no one else can't, we'd all say, that's wrong. That's just wrong. Well, that's what happened in France with Monaco. And that was Tapie's argument, that Well, they can do that and that's fine, but you accuse me of this and that's not. That was, and it's a very valid argument, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it's one that sort of comes up from time to time, particularly when Monaco are doing well. They're not doing particularly well at the moment, so nobody really cares. But yeah, he would try to find or get advantages in any way that he could. And he's still, absolutely loved in Marseille.
Yeah.
Any other stories, Tony, about the dressing room? Any mad teammates you had during that time?
Yeah, me and Marcel, because Marcel had a very strong Marseille accent, so it was very hard to me to grasp some of the words that Marcel would say. Marcel did. I got on with Cascarino really well, Christophe Marquet, Jean-Marc Ferreira, Bruno Germain. I saw his son. I used to go around his house, Bruno, and I saw his valet. I saw his son in the garden playing football, and I remember saying to him, he's not bad. He's not bad, Bruno, your boy. And he ended up making it professional and played for Marseille.
Won the league.
At
Monaco, and then went to Marseille.
Yeah, and Barthez, I got to know Fabien very well. Marcel did was the most. He was so born for Premier League football. He was good technically, but boy, he played alongside Hoddle for Monaco, Marcel. So that was the central midfield, and he was a very funny lad, and sometimes not on the right side of political sort of stuff. But once on the pitch, we were playing a game, and there was a sort of a break for an injury to a player, and I'm standing near Marcel, and he goes down on one knee and moves his shorts and just urinates on the pitch. And I'm looking at him, what are you doing? and he just looked at me and laughed. And I'd never seen that, and only saw that once in my career, that Marcel had done literally a pee-pee on the pitch.
He didn't go to the side of the pitch. He just in the middle of the pitch.
Exactly. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, what are you doing? And he just like, because he had this. If you remember him, have you seen him with his long hair? He had this jet black long hair, and he was a feisty character, and he never pulled out of a challenge. He was just full on Marcel, and really, really enjoyed his company. And we every time I go back, I get a big cuddle off him, and I just laugh with Marcel, and we have a little bit of a chat, and he was extraordinary. I enjoyed but there was loads of them. It was a great dressing room. There was, very little friction in there, and the drive to win. Every game was made to be really important. Even if it was against opposition, you'd normally think roll over. The dressing room wouldn't allow it. It was like, we will go after them, and we'll make it as intimidating as we can.
Yeah, and you're still well loved. Whenever I mention your name to anybody, if I say I'm speaking to Tony Cascarino this week, they'll straight away, Tony Goal, great, how is he? So it must be great as well to know that you've got a home from home over in France.
Yeah, well, you go. We didn't have social media then, did we? Where people would know a lot more about you. There was a lot of people that wouldn't have known me, because obviously different leagues weren't shown on the TV and everything. But word gets about, journalists find out a bit and then write something because it didn't go well here or blah blah blah. But I think I gave them a lot, and I think they gave me a lot from a perspective. I'm very honoured that I've given the opportunity to wear, like I said, the 9 shirt at Marseille. And it was a hard time when I left, because Gérard Gilly I'd had a knee, I had my knee cleaned, a toilet, as they say, on my knee, and I wasn't quite right for the first part. And we'd just got promoted. We'd been promoted twice because we had to stay in the division when the first time we got promoted. But the second time we got to the top flight, and I played in the opening game of the season against, I think it was Lyon, and I wasn't right. My knee wasn't. I played, but I knew my knee wasn't 100% right, and I struggled in the early bit, and then I got left out by Gérard Gilly, and I just couldn't stay, because I felt I'd done so much. I didn't want to be the player that sits on the bench that was good in League Two and didn't do anything in League One, even though I'd scored in cup competitions against League One teams. I knew I had to go, so that's why I went to Nancy, and then I ended up getting a good few goals in the top flight for Nancy, which is a smaller club, but it was equally, I felt that I'd had 2 great times at 2 different clubs. Marseille would always be the most special, but Nancy's pretty close to it as well.
Yeah, because we talk about Marseille obviously with you because it's such a huge club and you were so prolific there, but you played a really important role, I think, at Nancy. You weren't quite as prolific, but you did score a lot of goals in the top tier. You got them promoted as well one season when they were down, and by all accounts, this was towards the end of your career. You were playing a big brother role now. You knew France, you knew the French league, and I think you were really appreciated there.
Yeah, I was. I mean, look, I was given the honour, freedom of the city in Nancy. There was only one other sportsman at that particular time that had got it, and that was Michel Platini. It was... I had Laszlo Bologna, who was my coach, who was a real hard taskmaster. And he always said to me that if you want to keep up with the younger players, you're going to have to train harder than them. So the myth of, when you get into your mid-30s, you take your foot off the pedal, he was like, no chance. You have to train harder because they can run all day naturally. You can't. And I trained as hard as I'd ever done at Nancy. So that was a big pleasure as well. And I scored a couple I think I scored 3 against Marseille when we were in the top flight. I scored 2 at the Stade Picot in Nancy, and then I scored at the Velodrome for Nancy in a game we lost, I think 4-1. I scored there. My French experience on the football pitch was really, really great. I mean, Red Star was a non-event. Basically my knee was shot to pieces. I played one game and I was like, I just can't do it. And the most painful thing in France I dealt with, and I lost my motivation, was when we got relegated in my final year at Nancy, and we scored I think 42 points. We got 42 points in the league that year, and Bradford had stayed up with 35 in England. And I remember thinking, we've been relegated, and we had 5 teams who could have gone down on the final day. And that was really hard to take because I'd had a good season that year. Scored, I think I was on about 15 goals in the top flight in 38 games, which for Nancy was a decent return. And that was really the end of when we'd gone down. I knew that Nancy had to move on from me, and also I wanted to retire after that. And then I was offered something that was based totally, and I'd be honest with you, Matt, about money. They offered me a good contract to go, and I took it, and basically I just knew I couldn't do it after about the first week of the season started. I can't do it. So that was the sad end, but it wasn't. I had a great career.
6 great years, yeah.
6 great years in France. Six great years.
So to talk about Marseille at the moment, they're playing Newcastle in midweek, Tuesday night it is. It's a really important game for them because they have lost 3 and only won 1. They've got 3 points. That one victory, a good one against Ajax. They pushed Real Madrid hard, but lost 2-1 in the Bernabeu. And more disappointingly, lost to Sporting and to Atalanta. But under Roberto De Zerbi, there's a lot of hope these days. They've put together a strong squad. They're just 2 points behind PSG. Do you manage to sort of keep abreast of it, keep an eye on Marseille?
Yeah, I do, but not, obviously I work in England on a lot of football in England, but yeah, of course I keep an eye on Marseille, and they're just below the mark, aren't they, of qualifying? So there's quite a low bar, so you have a good few opportunities to get through to the next phase. Newcastle was probably a good game for them to play because Newcastle are not on great form. They're not playing nowhere near as good as last year. Eddie Howe's had a few issues, even though they've done much better in the Champions League than they've done in the league. They're just not quite right, Newcastle. Obviously, the loss of Isaac was a big problem. Vader Malda's come in and he's done okay, but they just don't quite look the same Newcastle. So it's an opportunity for Marseille because it's not a team I'd go, tell you what. If you'd have said to me Newcastle last season, I'd have said it's much more tougher proposition for Marseille. This year, it's not. They've got a chance. And you mentioned players. There's quite a number of ex-Premier League players, isn't there, in the Marseille team? So whether it's Mason Greenwood, Højbjerg, they got Egan Riley, he was in the Championship with Burnley last year.
Aubameyang up front.
So they've got. I mean, Mason Greenwood's a strange one because I watched him last year, and he scored a couple of goals in the game I came to, and I couldn't work out if the fans loved him or not. There is sometimes it feels like he isn't.
What period was this? Because they were right behind him. Then there was a couple of months in the middle of last season.
It would have been just before Christmas.
Yeah, well, that was when he was struggling. That was when he was struggling.
It was when he weren't closing down hard enough, and he was being a bit lazy off the ball. But you could see there's the player there. You can see that technically, his goal record at Marseille is really good. And especially this season, he's got quite a number again. He got 4 in 1, didn't he? He
did. He's just been named Ligue 1 Player of the Month. So, he's in good form. And, the fans absolutely love him. And, certainly now. And the thing is, he's got that ability. So
yes.
I found him frustrating at times. So I'm like, what a chance you got here to become a big hero in Marseille, because he's got the ability. And there were times where, he doesn't get in games. You see, he's not really working.
Well, he could be on the fringe of a game, can't he, Matt?
Yeah.
And that's probably the word. And yet you see all the qualities in him that he can, to become a star at Marseille or become a hero at Marseille is, if you can get going, but he also has to, and which I'm sure he's appreciated, because I haven't watched him enough this season. But if you put in all the work ethic and you put that alongside the talent that he's got, then they'll love you.
Yeah. I think that is something that has changed since last year, and I think De Zerbi's worked hard with him on what he does off the ball. Angel Gomez, because there are 3 English players currently: Egan Riley, Gomez, and Mason Greenwood. A year ago, Angel Gomez was playing for England, and a lot of people in England were thinking, this is the kind of guy that we've been missing, a little technical guy who's keeps the game very fluid. He's had a difficult period because he was out of contract at Lille and they left him out for a while. It's taken him a bit of time to settle in at Marseille, but he looks like he is doing that now. He's scored in the last 2 matches. Is he a guy, I think it's going to be too late for him to force his way into the World Cup, because Tuchel is now, on the kind of home straight, isn't he? And he's got those midfielders.
There.
Yeah, he's brought in guys like Anderson who've done really well.
Yeah.
But he's interesting because, like yourself, he's spent quite a lot of time out here in France now. He had 4 seasons at Lille.
Yeah.
He's obviously enjoying it. Is he a guy that you've seen much of? Do you rate him?
Of course. I mean, his best ability is keeping the ball. He's a mover and a passer. He just keeps that ball flowing, and he's very good at one-touch football as well when necessary. He seems to know when to take a touch and when not to. That is a gift. Because there's a lot of players who, especially with goal scorers, is to take a touch when you've got a chance of scoring and then it first time when you're more likely to score. And it's the same with passing. He takes a touch. He seems to have the right mindset of knowing, I need to take a touch in this scenario. And he's neat and tidy. Is he out of the reckoning? I think I'd agree with you that unfortunately when you do go abroad, unless you're absolutely pulling up trees in the Champions League. Now, if he was to go on and have a great campaign with Marseille, where Marseille get through to knockout stages, then play some big games, and he's literally gets man of the match, you never know if someone can knock the back door down, who could just come in and go, well, someone gets injured, the boy at Marseille is doing brilliant, we'll call him in. That happens even in very good squads. So I wouldn't say... I think it's going to be very difficult for him, but I wouldn't rule it out. I think a lot will come down to his Champions League performances, and if Marseille run deep in it.
Yeah. I was at the Velodrome in 2004 when Marseille beat Newcastle. That was the UEFA Cup. Didier Drogba was electric. And I remember, because you mentioned earlier on that you played with Gavin Peacock, and just bizarrely, I remember I was in the press stand and he was working for the media. I think he was working for radio, and I just remember him looking at me at one point. Like, atmosphere that night was unbelievable. He looked at me and he said, "I've never seen anything like this," and it just made me think, this is Gavin Peacock. He's had a big career, but it's just so special, isn't it? And it could be like that on Tuesday, particularly if Marseille can have a real go and get their tails up against Newcastle.
Yeah, I said there's no better place in the world of football. I think Napoli's pretty close. You know, there's a few clubs around that you can go, it can be hostile, it can be toxic, and it can be just unbelievable to play in. I've played in games in Turkey, which it's been very similar. Look, you have to try and embrace it. But for Newcastle, you know, their fan base is huge and they have incredible atmospheres at St James's Park as well. But it will be different. You know, in Marseille, it's always different. You never quite know how it's going to pan out, but it's a great European or Champions League tie, isn't it?
It is.
It's just a great tie. These are the ones
more important for Marseille, simply because Newcastle have got a good number of points. I think they've got 9 points already.
Yeah, and they are beatable. Like I said earlier, Matt, they really are. And there'll be a lot of players who've played in the Premier League, and you know, sometimes a few of them have been let go for whatever reason, and it's always seemed like you're taking a step back. Marseille is not a step back. Let's get it right. It's not. You know, whether you're Højbjerg who's left Tottenham, whether you go Greenwood's left Man United, and some people would say, oh, that's nonsense, Manchester United. Well, yeah, but you could, to a point, I would never agree to Marseille's a step back. And for others who have gone there, you know, you've mentioned, you know, Aubameyang, he would. I'm sure he runs much harder than he did when he was at Arsenal. He got away with it for a few years at Arsenal, where he'd get the goals, but he didn't chase so hard. I'm pretty sure he chases his backside off for Marseille, because if you don't, you'll soon know.
Tony, that's brilliant. Thank you. I want to finish with a couple of little games, if you like, for you. A couple of quick fire rounds. So I'm going to quiz you a little bit on the best players you've played with. I had a good time going through the internet, looking at all the teams you've played for.
Is there any line in the sand, Matt? Does it even include players in one game in a testimonial?
Can we include testimonial? Listen, I've gone through a list, so I'm going to put one. I'm going to basically give you two players, and each time you choose the best, and the best one's the winner stays on. So if at the end of it I haven't said someone that you want to include, then you let me know.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
All right, Tony Cascarino, the best player you have ever played with. I'm going to start with a goalkeeper, with two goalkeepers, Fabien Barthez or Paki Bona.
Fabien.
Yeah? Special?
Yeah, Fabien. Do you want an answer to that or just...
Well, you don't have to, but like one line maybe each time would be nice.
Fabien was... he fell asleep on the way to the Champions League final back in '93, and he was a young man. He fell asleep on the bus, and they had to wake him up when he got to the stadium. That says it all about Barthez.
Fabien Barthez or Ray Houghton?
Ooh. Ray made more goals for me.
Okay, Ray Houghton or Bernard Casoni? We're mixing it up now.
Bernard Casoni.
Bernard Casoni.
Bernard Casoni. Ray Houghton.
Ray Houghton or Dwight York?
Ray Houghton. Dwight was a great player, but we only played a few times. So Ray.
Yeah, the next one might be similar. Ray Houghton or David Platt?
Definitely Ray Houghton.
Okay. Ray Houghton or Marcel Dib?
Oh, sorry, Ray. Marcel Dib.
Really?
Yeah, no, Marcel was an extraordinary player. Extraordinary.
Not just because he urinated on the pitch. he had a lot more going.
Well, he was so good technically and he was so feisty. And I just remember, you'd watch him train and you'd think, Marcel's not that good. But every time in the game, he looked like a different player.
All right, Marcel Dib or Paul McGrath?
McGrath, I knew that was coming, Paul McGrath. Now, Paul is up there with the very best midfielder and centre-half. Extraordinary. I room with him. The worst pro I've ever known, and yet was just always man of the match. He could not train all week and be man of the match nearly every weekend. I was with him at Villa as well. Unreal, Paul McGrath.
This is a hard one, I reckon. Paul McGrath or Roy Keane?
McGrath.
Easy.
It's not hard.
No, not hard. Because
one more, but
I watched more Roy Keane than I did Paul McGrath, and sometimes I just thought he was astonishing, Roy Keane.
Yeah, Roy is a great player, But if you used to say to me, honestly, my opinion of McGrath as a centre-half and as a midfielder, I don't think Roy Keane could have handled Paul McGrath physically. He's a beast, absolute beast, Paul.
Paul McGrath or Jean-Marc Ferreri?
Oh, no contest, McGrath.
Didn't Ferreri set up a few goals for you?
Yeah, he did, but no. Paul McGrath is probably the highest bar that I could think of, really. I mean, there's a couple that are really close, but...
okay, well, I've got a few more.
Go on.
Paul McGrath or Teddy Sheringham?
Oh, good one. Cool. Sorry, Ted. McGrath.
McGrath or John Aldridge?
McGrath.
Paul McGrath or Glenn Hoddle?
McGrath. All day long.
Is Paul McGrath the best you've played with, or have you got someone else up your sleeve?
Well, no, I could say someone that I played one game in. I played in a testimonial with just mind-blowing how good he was. But the forward line was Cascarino, Cantona, and the one I'm talking about, Zidane. Zidane. If you was to say Zidane or McGrath, I know I only played one game with him, but I told everybody when I was playing in France and before the 96 Euros, I spoke to Andy Townsend and other pals. I said, you've got to see this lad at Bordeaux. I said, he's frightening. I said, he glides across the pitch. I said, you can't get it off him. He's much bigger than you'd think. Goals, he just scores. I played against Zidane also at Cannes, when he was at Cannes, as a very young man. I mean, he had a really strange Euro 96. He didn't play particularly well, but I was convinced I was right about him, and of course by 98 most people agree, and I would say Zidane's in the top 5 players that have ever played the game. Sorry Paul, but that would be my only one. I think Zidane was an incredible player. That
must have been a good testimonial. I think Cantona and Zidane probably still talk about the day they played up top with you.
Do you know who the manager was that day? Have you heard of the goalkeeper called Pascal Almeta?
Meta, yeah.
Yeah, right. It's his testimonial. Barthez was coming over to play in the Legends. So it was a Legends, ex-Marseille Legends team. So it's Cantona there, and it was Zidane. It was at Marseille as a youngster, wasn't he? I'm pretty sure.
Well, he grew up in Marseille, wasn't he?
Grew up. I thought he was in the sort of the kids' teams at Marseille. Anyway, but the manager of the day for that team, my team, Sir Alex Ferguson, right? He asked me. He said, "How's your French?" I said, "It's okay." He said, "Ask Zidane if he had come to Man United." In the dressing room for this testimonial.
Yeah. Right? What did he say?
I asked him, and Zidane just went, "No." That's it. And when Sir Alex said, "What did you say?" I went, "No."
Fantastic. Oh dear.
It was very funny.
Excellent.
But yeah, so look, it's harsh because McGrath would be. I think as one of the greats that I played with, and is very, very underrated, was Dennis Irwin, Monty Whelan. Two players.
Yeah, well, they're guys. Yeah. I mean, that Irish team, I think we don't realise how good it was as well, looking at the names now.
His best was an incredible player. But yeah, I would go with McGrath on who, if you discount a testimonial, but I've been in that game for him for one time and witnessed him in France, because I came through that period of 94 to 2000, and obviously Zidane was, I don't know what year he left to go to Juve, but it must have been around 97, 98, somewhere around then.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. Would that be right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
and you're right, he was on Marseille's books at some point, because I know that they rejected him because the story goes that he tried a nutmeg in his own penalty area and they didn't like that. So whoever the coach was like, get rid of this cocky chap.
You know, Matt, when stories get exaggerated and you say, "Oh, he was a youngster and they let him go," and I've used that phrase on radio and said, "Look, Zinedine Zidane can let go, anyone can be let go."
No, exactly.
But you never quite know how much he was involved. Was he a kid who just was at 12 there and had an odd game here or there, or you just don't know the full circumstances. But I had heard he was on the books at Marseille.
Yeah, Tony, I'm going to let you go. We've got one little last test though for you. You've got to tell me which you prefer out of these two options, and very briefly why. Which team was better, Marseille 1993, PSG 2025?
Oh, I would go. I'm going to have a bias, Matt, aren't I? Come on, 93 because I did see. I think the standout feature of the Marseille team was that they were better in previous years when they had Waddle, Moser, Francescoli. I thought they was a better team, but the desire and hunger of that Marseille team at that time, I love it when teams that shouldn't win it, as in because they're not as good as others, but do it. And that will always stand out for me, that 93 team, because I played with a few and I watched that Marseille team on video, and they had so much about them with courage, dedication, fighting, and the PSG team was more of a luxury, and all the spending. I mean, Marseille were doing spending as well. Let's get it right. But I would say just because I felt they overachieved that Marseille team. Where the PSG team, it took years to get there, but they were full of stars anyway, weren't they?
Yes, diplomatic answer.
It's a total
Marseille
bias
legend.
one.
Tony, the Velodrome or the Den?
Ooh, Velodrome. Sorry, no one from Millwall's listening, so I'm okay.
You never know. Glass of red wine or a pint of Guinness?
Guinness.
Okay, so you didn't become that French.
No, not that French. No. I'd rather have a Guinness every day.
Roberto De Zerbi or Luis Enrique?
Ooh, I think De Zerbi. I think De Zerbi just because I think I see a manager that is just. I mean, Luis Enrique has done incredible with PSG, but I look at his Spain team when they went in the World Cup in Qatar. They were awful. Just. They had nothing about them. I thought Spanish football was finished when I saw his Spanish team. But I would go De Zerbi because I do think that De Zerbi, if he can keep that pace of play that when Marseille are at their best, then he'll be as big a hero as there's been at Marseille for many years if he can achieve something.
Irish stew or bouillabaisse?
Irish stew because I don't really like bones. Bouillabaisse is nice, but I don't like bones.
Too many bones, yeah, in the sort of fish soup, isn't it? It's nice though when it's done well.
It is lovely. Just the bone thing got me because I was taken on a boat on about my second day at the football club. We went on a boat with the team and bouillabaisse, and I was continually remember picking out the bones of the fish. I like it.
All right, Bernard Tapie or Jack Charlton?
Jack, I mean, I'd love them two to be at dinner together. That would definitely end up in a punch-up.
Didier Deschamps or Thomas Tuchel?
As what we're talking about, as a manager for me, or just
as a manager, yeah. Which do you prefer?
Probably Deschamps because of what he's achieved with France. He's been, and again having Mbappe and many other stars in that team. But there is, I mean, his record is pretty sensational, isn't it?
Yeah, unbelievable career, player and manager.
Yeah.
All right. Last but not least, Tony Goal or Cass?
Cass.
Yeah?
Cass. Yeah. Yeah, I love the phrase of Tony Goal, but all my friends call me Cass. My wife calls me Cass. She doesn't call me Tony Goal.
Okay. Well, I think she's preparing lunch, so we should probably let you go, Tony. It's been great chatting, absolutely brilliant, and you've been very generous with your time, so thank you so much for that.
It's always good reminiscing and looking back at some great football clubs and, a time and a place for playing your best football, and it was Marseille, without doubt.
Well, it's been brilliant reminiscing with you, Tony. Thank you so much, and we hope to have you on sometime in the future, maybe when Marseille win the league in May, possibly.
If they do that, give me a call, and I'll be quite happy to come on.
Thanks, Tony.
Cheers, Matt. Bye-bye.
Well, that was brilliant to hear from Tony Cascarino. He was, of course, the subject of last week's quiz. The question was, name the 3 clubs Tony Cascarino played for in France. And, of course, you will now know the answer if you didn't already. Marseille, Nancy and Red Star. He was given the freedom of the city by the town of Nancy. Well done to Abibar. George Rodriguez, Pierre Carpentier and John Crossan. You'll get 2 points. 1 point for Chris Cole. He got everything apart from Red Star. George leading the way in our standings. He's got 9 points. I want to apologise as well, because apparently last week, when I was giving you the answer to the quiz question, I forgot to mention that Dante was the answer. I just read out the people who got it right. So congratulations to you guys as well. That concludes this week's edition of Across the Channel. We will be back next Monday with all the latest Ligue 1 action. It's been a real pleasure bringing you today's pod. I would ask you one last time just to take a little moment, give us a rating in Spotify or in Apple. Send us a little comment either on the podcast platform or using our email, league1podcast@gmail.com. Subscribe on YouTube as well. You can watch the whole Cascarino interview. There'll be some little bonus extras as well on the YouTube channel across the channel. Thank you so much. We'll be back again next week. Have a great few days. Take care. Bye-bye.